Great. So Lawrence Unified School District is in uncharted territory as it transitions to online education. Now, Governor Laura Kelly announced only yesterday the closure of all school buildings and activities throughout the state. Tonight, members of the Lawrence and Free State journalism staffs are meeting with Superintendent Anthony Lewis to discuss how the district has been handling this and what lies ahead. Okay, so I guess to start out, one of the things that we were wondering was, what's happening behind the scenes and kind of the decision-making process for how these next weeks are going to carry out. What kind of thought is being put into that?
Yeah, okay. Well, first of all, thank you all for asking me to be on tonight. And let me also say that to our Free State scholars, I did have on Free State gear yesterday. Today I wore Lawrence High. So all of our Free State scholars, please know I did have on Free State gear on yesterday. I will say this has been a whirlwind. We were meeting today, and it seems like it's been over a week. It hasn't even been a week yet. 3 days back from spring break. So what has been happening behind the scenes is when we was ordered to close by Lawrence Douglas County Health Department. We were maybe only two of 3 school districts throughout the state that were ordered to close for 2 weeks, 14 calendar days. And so we, at that point, began to have daily meetings with Education Commissioner Randy Watson. We would have daily meetings, and he would give us updates in consultation with the KNEA, which is the State Teachers Association, in consultation with the State Health Department and the State Medical Director, I guess. They were in consultation, and at the time, they did not see a need to close schools. As a matter of fact, most of those meetings were just about strategies and recommendations on how to continue with school, but with some precautions. And that was on, what's today? Today is the 18th. That was on last week, Thursday, Friday. And then we would have the meetings on Saturday. And at the time at our Saturday meeting, Commissioner came on and said, there's not a need for us to have a meeting on Sunday. We will have our next Zoom meeting on Monday. And we received an email on Sunday morning said we would have a special call Zoom meeting. And this was when the commissioner strongly encouraged, and they worded it just like that, strongly encourage schools to close for that coming week. As you know, Lawrence Public Schools and a few other districts throughout the state were in an interesting schedule with spring break. Our spring break was early this year because of, we try to follow KU's calendar. And so according to Commissioner Watson, about maybe 28% of school districts throughout the state had the same spring break as we had. And so you can imagine there was a number of larger districts and a large number of other districts that were getting ready to go on spring break, and community members and staff, I'm assuming, was beginning to become worried by families traveling and then coming back. And so I think that was the genesis of Commissioner strongly encouraging school districts to close that following week. And we had, according to him, about all of our school districts that did decide to close. And he made that recommendation on Sunday, March the 15th for that coming week. And then Monday, we had another Zoom meeting, just still talking about how we can provide support to our families just during this week while we were out. And that following day, which was yesterday, the governor ordered all schools to close for the remainder of the school year. So I guess the short answer to that question, but just behind the scenes was either recommendations on how you can continue schools, those that were still in school, continue school with some recommendations around some precautions, and just updating us on what they were talking about at the state level.
So with the schools closing, would there be any chance at all for it to open back up if the virus stops spreading and already reached its peak and starts to go down?
What we know right now, the governor has ordered schools to close through the end of this school calendar year, which for us will be May the 21st. Now, certainly the governor can overturn her own decision, obviously, should that happen. So for example, if for some miraculous reason that the virus is gone at the middle of April, I'm just making that up, the governor certainly can override her own decision and open schools, but giving the consultation that she's been receiving from the state medical doctor, and they're following and looking at some other countries where the disease spread in such a rapid manner, she made that recommendation to close the remainder of the school year.
Most of the questions that we have really are about what continuous learning is going to look like, which I know, that's still something that's in the process that we're thinking about right now. But as of right now, what do you think the district's biggest concerns are when it comes to rolling out online learning?
Yeah. So with this, the commissioners, Randy Watson has assembled a task force of about 25 teachers throughout the state, former teachers of the year. We were fortunate to have 2 staff members from Lawrence Public Schools to be a part of that task force. Lucinda Crenshaw, who's a teacher at West Middle School, and Susie Green, who works with our early childhood program. So both of them are on the committee, and actually asked Lucinda to come to our executive leadership team meeting today to kind of give us an update or a briefing of what she was able to share today. So that task force has been charged with answering a number of questions. What would that look like? What would e-learning look like? How can we meet the needs of our students on IEPs? Other questions like how we provide meals for our students. So the state will give us recommendations. The task force deadline to get their recommendations to the commissioner was today at 5 o'clock. Again, on our call today with the commissioner, he assured us that we would have the plan in our district on tomorrow by close of business day. And then we will take those recommendations and pretty much make it fit Lawrence. He shared with us that this committee of talented teachers has done a tremendous amount of work in a short amount of time and have come up with just and addressed just about any question that could have come up. And so we're going to get, according to them today, we're going to get a lot of information. And I think what they shared with us was a Google document that's going to have tabs, for example, a tab on special education. And so there will be questions and concerns and recommendations around special education, ELL, involving parents, what math may look like at the elementary, middle. And so we're going to get a plethora of information. But what I appreciate about the commissioner is that he's not giving us these recommendations and mandating that we follow them. Rather, he's allowing each individual school district to take those recommendations and pretty much make it fit our district. And so I will tell you 3 of the options that the committee is looking at. And so one would be e-learning, which will be everything online. Buildings can be open, and so they wanted to make sure that they pointed that out clear with us today, that school buildings, the governor ordered school buildings to close, but learning will not end, obviously. However, they've been allowed to follow the CDC's recommendation of no more than 10 individuals in a space at any given time. And they have given permission for buildings or classrooms to be open with 10 individuals in that space. Obviously, with just our high schools alone, with 1,600 in one and close to 1,900 in the other, but probably a logistical nightmare of trying to police and schedule 10 people in one room. A concern that I have is for our staff. While we can potentially schedule 10 individuals, and that 10 is including the teacher, so 9 scholars in that class or in that space. But what happens? They go home, they come back. They go home out in the community and come back. And so we're stand a chance of potentially exposing our staff and other students to the virus, I guess you would say. And then the other option would be what they call packets, which would be kind of like worksheets or assignments that would be either email and potentially printed for our students. Lawrence is in a very fortunate place where, according to some of my other colleagues, other superintendents, not having to worry so much about devices. As you know, all of our high school students have MacBooks, all of our middle school students have iPads, and just this year, all of our elementary students have iPads. So we have the devices to really do e-learning. However, Wi-Fi access is a concern. What families that may not have internet access, so that's a concern. And so we're going to look at the recommendations. We want to involve our local LEA involved as well to kind of really just kind of talk about what our plan will look like in Lawrence. So I don't know what's in the recommendations. Like I said, we will get those hopefully tomorrow.
Do you happen to know if this affects the end of the quarter, or is that something that will be discussed tonight?
So yeah, this affects the remainder of the school year. And so I think we were on the tail end of the third quarter, if I'm not mistaken, and beginning to start the fourth quarter. So what we will ask, and what I would strongly suggest of our team as we develop this plan is to really be cautious and start slow. Matter of fact, what Lucinda shared with us today was that was the tone of the committee, less is more. Because keep in mind, we're moving and trying to provide education that we would normally provide in a classroom in various homes, you know, in various different situations. So we would want our teachers not to jump into instruction, you know, the first day. I would encourage our teachers to check in on our students, and at the same time, our administrators and our team check on our teachers before we just say, okay, here's the plan, go out and teach our students. Let's just check on everybody and see how we're doing before we begin that instruction. And so we'll begin to talk about what that looks like in terms of the assignments that were completed in third quarter and how we will finalize that third quarter grade versus the fourth quarter and the fourth quarter grade as well. What I've asked our board officers to do right now, Lawrence Public Schools require, I think, 23 credit hours for high school. The state minimum is 21. And so what I've asked our board to take action on Monday is to relax that for the remainder of this year. And so if there are students that have already completed their 21 hours, there again, this is pending board approval. The board would have to vote on this. But I've asked them to, in their new business on Monday, to relax that. And so students that may potentially already have those 21 credits are pretty much could be done.
So, you know, you were pointing out that in Lawrence, we have laptops and iPads for our students, which allows us to continue digital learning and, you know, move away from that reliance on packets or those other scenarios that you described. Do you have an idea of, with those technologies, what types of like platforms or like softwares teachers may be relying on? So like Google Suite, Zoom, like we're using right now, has
Yeah.
that been discussed?
Yeah, that has been discussed. And what we will not do is present anything new, any new platform or anything. We're going to look at what we're existently using or what we're currently using, which is, you mentioned Google platform, what our teachers know, what our students know, and use that to kind of roll out the instruction. And I will say, you will not have 7 full classes of full online assignments. I want our staff, and really this is, those of you at Free State, this is really what the committee is calling redesign on steroids. It's like we're really moving swiftly through this redesign process and personalized learning. So it will be more competency based as opposed to completing assignment to get a grade. How can I demonstrate that I mastered this standard? And I can do that in a number of ways. And so it may cause for some cross grade level, cross subject level, I would say, planning, where if I complete this task, this activity, it satisfies my social studies and potentially my ELA grade or competency. And so we're just brainstorming ways that what we don't want to do. At the same time, we're telling people to be safe and take care of themselves. We don't want you all to, teachers or students, have to worry about, oh, I need to make sure I complete this assignment. Yes, we want to make sure that this is a meaningful assignment, so you can leave your grade level ready for that next grade level, or leave your high school ready for college. So we want to definitely make sure it's meaningful, but at the same time, not given this current situation of where we are with this virus, just being mindful and understanding that, because family dynamics are different. And I will tell you, as a father of 4 students in Lawrence Public Schools, 2 high schoolers and 2 elementary schoolers, I'm gonna have to lean into my high schoolers to help with my 2 elementary kids. And so many of you, or many of our high school students may be asked to assist with their younger siblings. And so we dare not just bombard students with loads of work.
So like what you're saying is students wouldn't expect, 8 to 3, you're on Google Hangouts all day in different classes.
No, and so that's the thing. It's going to look very differently for each and every one of you. We will not expect teachers to log on at 8 and log off at 3 and teach 6 classes, 6 classes. We will not do that without knowing, what the plan is. I'm just, brainstorming this, but teachers would load or push out. I don't know, if I'm using the correct terminology, load or push out the assignments, and students are given grace and time to complete those assignments. So there again, for my students, if they are watching my 2 younger kids, they may not be able to start their assignments until my wife or myself gets off work. So their time in front of the computer may be in the evening, or they may be able to just do their assignments on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So this is really requiring us to really think outside the box. But I think the positive part of this is we're really getting to true personalized learning, and to a place where our students are really truly the CEOs of their own learning, and not having to sit in a class or sit in front of a computer for a certain amount of time.
You mentioned hotspots. Has the district discussed putting in like hotspots for students who don't have internet access, especially those in elementary and middle school who usually may not have the internet access and it'd be harder for them to learn? Has the district discussed what to do for those students?
Yes, we have. I don't know if you've heard of Kajits, which is our mobile hotspots. I checked with our technology director. We have about 65. Some of them are already out, just checked out to scholars. And we have about 65 that we just need to get activated, and they can be ready to be pushed out. We are researching. There's a lot of internet providers that are really coming to the table now to provide these services. We have to be cautious of those, because what I don't want to do, so for example, Spectrum had put out, we're offering free internet services, and it was all on social media, but Spectrum is not available in our area. AT&T put out offers. And so I want to be careful about that, because what I don't want to do is push that out to our families and say that this company is offering internet services for $5 or $10 per month for the first 3 months, and then you get a $29, $39 bill later down the road. So we've been talking about mobile hotspots. We've been talking about applications that don't require internet service. We've been talking about, and I'm definitely not, technology is not my lane. So I asked our technology director, could we expand our reach or broadband, or I guess expand our reach from the schools. So yeah, we've been talking about ways to address that what I would call that digital divide. And if there's an opportunity where we feel that we can't meet that need, and then that student may be required to do assignments another way, submit assignments another way. But what we want to do is make sure that we're equitable in our decisions, and making sure that we're doing all that we can to partner with organizations. And I will tell you that you may have seen it on social media, or you all are not on Facebook anymore, are you? No? Okay. Well, I've been seeing a lot on Facebook, where a lot of businesses and organizations have been just really reaching out. How can we support? And so I can easily see ways that this community will support and help us address the internet issue.
So one big thing for, graduating seniors that I think they're concerned about is like questions of GPA. So for example, you said one of the things you're pushing the board to do is lower graduation requirements. But like, how does that impact things like GPA if, those students didn't want to continue with those classes?
Right. And so we talked about that today. Great question. So for example, if a scholar is enrolled in a class and obviously has not completed the third quarter, or definitely hasn't completed the fourth quarter, but they have enough credits to graduate, that they're done, the 21 credits, we would just put exempt on their transcript, and it will not impact their GPA at all in terms of the calculation. Great questions.
Many students involved in extracurricular activities are concerned about how that will be taught online, as well as lettering. Is that something that will be discussed tonight as well?
Well, I will tell you, with the activities, extracurricular activities, theater, band, sports, all of those obviously have been canceled as well. What the task force was charged with was really just focusing on the core academics, and coming up with ways that scholars can have a meaningful academic experience as much as possible for the remainder of the year. The only conversation that I've heard about extracurricular activities would be from a superintendent on the call today that says that he has a plan. I don't know what his plan is, to allow students to still perform virtually. And so, I will tell you, with this announcement, my heart immediately went out to all of our students and families, but our seniors in particular, when it comes to this is what one of the things that seniors look forward to. Things like my senior year finishing in the orchestra, my senior year on this team, or this debate team, or encore, or Showtime, things like that. And puts us in a difficult situation. No one ever dreamed that this school year would end like this. And I will tell you, I did not write my second year as superintendent like this. And so this is really difficult on everyone. And so I've always been of the opinion, and I still am, of the answers are in the room. And I always share that we dare not make decisions here at this building and push out and ensure and make sure that everybody does that. And so if someone has the answer or a suggestion or an idea of how we can potentially, I don't know, have encore showtime virtually, or where students can still showcase their talents. I know it's difficult. I'm definitely open to that. But as far as a recommendation around student performances or athletics or things like that, state has not given us a recommendation other than all of those events are canceled.
So, yeah, one of the things I know also is, KU Blueprint and College and Career Center, those are kind of in a weird situation. Has that been talked about?
Mm-hmm. Yes, KU Blueprint and AP courses. So students that are enrolled in AP courses and KU Blueprint should have received an email or will receive an email in the next day or so. So I'll start with KU Blueprint. KU Blueprint um, teachers will follow KU's schedule. And so KU's online classes will begin on Monday, I think. And so our KU Blueprint instructors have been informed and alerted that they will reach out to their family. So what they're doing now is just communication, checking in on the scholars, seeing if they have internet access and things like that. And then they will continue with their instruction. And so that will continue in a manner as KU has. AP classes, those instructors should have been or will be contacting their families to talk about what that will look like for the remainder of the year. When we checked with College Board the other day, they had not altered their AP testing at the time. And so we're moving forward with making sure that our scholars are prepared for that. With the college and career classes. And so, for example, if there's a student that's on the path to get their CNA, we will make sure that virtually that we will make sure that those scholars complete what they need to complete to leave with their industry recognized credentials. And so we're pretty much just moving our instruction as much as we can virtually. And so all the requirements that students have signed up for in terms of those industry recognized credentials will continue, but in a virtual manner.
And so for classes that aren't, going through AP or College and Career Center or Blueprint or whatever, when it comes to finals, I know, some Kansas schools even removed the attendance requirement for like senior exemptions to finals. Has that been discussed?
We have not talked about that specifically, but I would say that should not be a problem, and I would probably push for that as well. I mean, because we are, initially thought we were going to have 2 weeks out, and now we're out for the remainder of the year, so we dare not hold a student's attendance over their head in terms of them being exempt or not. And those finals may look totally different. We don't know what they will look like. They may not, probably will not be like your traditional finals.
Many seniors are concerned with how graduation is going to work. Has there been any discussion about if there's going to be a virtual graduation or if it will still be like a meeting but within a small group?
Mm-hmm. That graduation and prom, to be honest with you, have been two things that have been really been heavy on my heart and on my mind. So there again, everything through May 21st is canceled. And what I will say is when we are cleared. So for example, if we are cleared, and what I mean by cleared is that we're no longer bound to restrictions in terms of 10 or less or 50 or less in an area. We're totally cleared to go back to as business as usual. And it still will probably be with some kind of precautions. I'm going to fight to make sure that our students have a prom and a graduation. I might even DJ the prom. I don't know. But I will make sure that we have a graduation and we have a prom. So for example, we're cleared in June. We'll schedule, make the arrangements to have our prom and graduation shortly thereafter. The only, I would see, barrier or wrench in the plan would be if we're not cleared until August, and when many of our scholars are off to college or off to jobs. But we still probably can look at. I mean, that would be a worst case scenario. Who wants to have a graduation in August or prom in August when you're thinking about starting your college career. But if our students say, hey, we still want to come up one Saturday to have our prom, we will make it happen.
One of the things we were wondering about is access to resources. So for example, social workers or counselors at the high schools and other schools, is there a plan for how those resources might be accessed without being in the school buildings?
Yes. And so that has been on my agenda, one of my agenda items every day. So I meet with traditional school year, our executive leadership team meets once a week. Since Monday, we've been meeting every single day, and we plan to continue to meet every single day. So that has been one of my standing agenda items that I want updates on. And that's around mental health for our students, not only for our students, for our families, for our staff. And I'll talk about our families and staff in a moment. But yes, we have been talking about that in ways that our students can have access to our social workers, our students can have access to our counselors, and thinking of how, what's the best method. We rolled out, the county rolled out Engage Douglas County. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. Engage Douglas County is a resource that's out there for teenagers and they address areas or things such as vaping, suicide, social and emotional well-being. And so that's a resource. Obviously, we have our suicide prevention line that's always been out there. But our students know our social workers, our students know our counselors. What can we do to make sure that they still have some kind of access to those individuals? And so that's something that we're talking about. I even asked our team yesterday, is there a way that we could roll out a link or a number to text to where our students could have that immediate virtual FaceTime with a social worker or a counselor, kind of like telemedicine, where they can have that FaceTime with a doctor, and same thing for our students to have the FaceTime with someone they know. It's one thing to put out an 800 number and you get someone that on the other end you have no knowledge of, but it's another thing to click on a button and see a familiar face. And so yes, that's something that we are working on and talking about daily, and we will have some information out soon on that, because our teenagers are faced with a lot of challenges just in a normal school year. Now you take the entire school year away from them, that just compounds those things. And so we want to make sure that we are mindful of that and that we are being responsive to our students' needs. I mentioned families. I'll give you an example. My wife and I went to the grocery store the other night, and the shelves were bare. And here I am, a superintendent who could afford the food, but there was nothing there. And so I began to wonder, how am I going to, because they're telling people stock up for at least 2 weeks. How am I going to feed my kids? Imagine what some of our other families are facing with, now I have my kids at home, and there again, it could be one kid in the home or it could be 6 kids in the home. When I was out delivering food today, I went to a couple of homes where the parents had 6 kids there. And so the stress of the kids being at home every single day and knowing I have to feed my kids and my family, but everyone's telling me you shouldn't be going out. And then when I do go out, there's nothing, they're on the shelves, there's no toilet paper. So that just compounds some of the emotional stress on our parents. And so there again, making sure that we are a resource to our families. And then lastly, but certainly not least, our staff. Our teachers have, this has hit them just as hard as it has hit anyone, but there again, they have to take care of their families, and that's why I don't want administrators or anyone else rolling a bunch of stuff out to our staff and making them come into buildings and things like that and logging on at a certain time. I want them taking care of their families as well. And so this is just a time for us to really come together as a community and just meet the needs of first and foremost our students, but also our staff and families as well from a mental health standpoint.
Has the state implemented any resources for students who are staying home and need to be watched by a parent?
No, they haven't. I would say the governor has been wanting us to take a look at how we could provide childcare for some of our first responders in our community, our police officers, paramedics, nurses. And so we've been working with our Boys and Girls Club Teen Center to see how we could possibly provide a resource for our first responders. But the fact of the matter is, and it's I tell you, it's unfortunate. There again, when I was out today, there were some homes that I would go to, and students are there, by themselves, and so this is just there again another opportunity for us to take care of Lawrence. And so to answer your question, the state hasn't given us much guidance or any type of recommendation as it relates to providing at-home support for our students and families.
And so those food services, getting food to students who can't get it from their actual schools anymore, is that something that we know can be sustained until the end of this regular school year period?
Yes, if I have to be on my route that I was on today for the rest of the year, I will be on it. Yeah. So to answer your question, yes, our plan is to sustain that throughout the year. We started on Tuesday with 5 sites: Hillcrest, Swegler, Kennedy, Billy Mills, and Liberty Memorial. Those are our 5 sites. And on our first day, we served, I think, close to 500. Close to 500 meals. And so what we're doing is giving out a breakfast and a lunch to a student. So on Tuesday, families would have to drive to those or walk to those sites. And so we always, there again, at our meetings, we reflect and say, how did the day go? Do we feel like we met the needs of our families? What are some potential barriers? And transportation was a barrier. And so in a matter of a couple of hours, assembled a team to come up with a way to get meals out to our families. And so what we did, created a survey to just see where the need was, and emailed that survey out to all families and just simply asking them, do you need meals brought to your home? And if so, how many? Leave your phone number, your address. And last night, the team and I, we were texting. The survey probably went out maybe around 6 o'clock. At about 9 o'clock, we had close to 100 families that had responded and said they could definitely benefit from transportation. Definitely benefit from the transportation. And by 10:30 this morning, when we were rolling out to deliver, we had over 300 meals that we were delivering. And just to tell you, if I could just brag on our the talented staff that we have in this district. One of our team members researched it's not even an app, but it's some kind of platform where and I learned some of these words. He dumped dumped is not a tier 3 word, obviously, but he dumped the data from the survey into this platform, and it spit out routes. And so, for example, I was on a route. And so he texted me the link. I clicked on the link, and there was my 12 homes that I had to go to. And I clicked on a button. It alerted the first family that I was on the way and the estimated time that I would get there. And then once I got there and delivered the food, I would just click arrived, and it would tell the family that the food had been delivered. And so that came in handy at a couple of stops where no one was there. And where just children were there. It alerted the families that the food had been delivered. And so with that, we used our district vehicles to do so, pickup trucks, utility vans, other vans to do that. We had 9 vehicles out today. The survey is still out, and so we will plan to deliver tomorrow. I will say we had a meeting with First Student today because we're still paying their contract, but we're in conversations about maybe lowering that, since they don't have to incur the fuel costs of running all of the routes that they would normally have to run traditionally. But we're in conversations with them about potentially how they can assist with running some buses to some of those routes. The challenge will come in with some of because we're doing this door to door. We're not doing it at a bus stop. The challenge will come in with some of the buses getting into some of the smaller streets. So to answer the question, I know that was a long answer to your question. Our goal is to continue to feed our families for the remainder of the year. And as I shared with, I think it was Channel 4 today, we have about 38% of our students that are on free and reduced lunch rate. But this is about all of our students, all 12,000 of our students and their families. There again, if there's not a lot of food in the grocery stores, that's one thing that we can take off off a family's plate, is they know that at least my child will have a breakfast and a lunch daily, and now all I need to worry about is dinner.
So with the delivering of the resources, how much is that costing for us? And would students be able to help out and volunteer to do those kinds of things?
So it's not costing us anything. I would say if it costs us anything, it costs us fuel for the vehicles. This was food that we already had in our buildings, and so of course, if school was in, we would have to continue to order food. And so I would tell you, for the first day, what Paula Murish, who is our director of student services, not student services, district services, and she oversees our child nutrition program. She just rallied all of the food from all of the different sites into those 5 locations, and they just began to prepare the food to go out. And so it's not costing us anything in terms of us buying additional food. And you had a second part of your question.
Yeah, it was if students would be able to
Okay.
volunteer.
I would love for students to volunteer. We would probably just have to make sure that we're mindful of, and of course, we don't want our students out and potentially to get exposed to the virus. We would just have to be mindful of the 10 or less in a given area. And there again, if I could brag again on our certified teachers, we sent a survey out for teachers to volunteer at the 5 sites, and we wanted 10 teachers at each site to help with the distribution and traffic control at each one of those sites. And we sent the survey out, and we still needed several staff members. And within 37 minutes, every site was fully staffed. And so we have 10 certified teachers that are volunteering their time to be at these sites. And so to answer your question, we would just have to make sure we're mindful of the less than 10 people in the area recommendation.
Would there be any other way for students to be helping out the district while they're trying to figure stuff out?
That's a great question, and I will tell you, similar to what we're sharing with other staff members, parents, and community members that want to lend a hand in this process. And what I shared today was, and I'm not asking you to go out and spend any money, but this is what I was sharing with community members and parents. If you're out in a grocery store and you're buying canned goods, or you're buying toilet tissue or some other necessities, you could pick up an extra copy. Our foundation, I think, has taken the lead and wants to kind of do a drive in that area. Other ways, I would say, it's really tough to answer that question given the fact that we're kind of should be quarantined, and I don't want to say yes. If I could get a lot of students, or at least 100 students, to come and help us do this. I just don't feel comfortable asking students, and I definitely appreciate the willingness for our students to volunteer. But there may be some other ways that we can think of that you can do some things maybe in your home to continue to support what we do. I will say, if you're not following me on Snapchat, I'll encourage you to follow me. As we're beginning to develop our plan, I may come out and just post something. Is it post something or snap something?
Post something like
Post
to
something.
your story. Yeah.
Okay, post something on my story. I may post something on my. I may post an idea or a question on my story that I may want some immediate feedback from students on.
What's your username on Snapchat?
I knew you would ask that. I should know that, right? Um, let's see. How do I get? Oh, it's Dr. Lewis 497. So
Okay.
DRLEWIS 497.
I'm not sure if this is something that you've thought about that much, but specifically with Lawrence High School, I know the fact that, there's hundreds of less students in that building now and construction's still ongoing. Do you know if there's any considerations about the schedule of construction changing, or if that's going to help them catch up, or if anything like that's been communicated?
Yeah. So we haven't sat down with the construction team. To be honest with you, my main concern was making sure we get the students and families fed, and then begin to work on this e-learning plan. But I will say this: of course, if you were at Lawrence High, there was some level of construction going on throughout the day, and then there was more construction being done after hours and some on weekends. And you're right, with students and staff out of the building, there's a little more, and they are doing more than what they would normally do on a day if students were in the building. I have heard that there are some challenges with getting some materials, obviously, in from, for whatever reason, from other suppliers that maybe closed, or whatever barrier is in terms of getting supplies. But I don't anticipate that to put us off schedule. I honestly anticipate us to probably, and there again, I'm not in construction, but my thinking is that we should be ahead of schedule, given the fact that we're not confined to minimum work during the school day. They should be able to do much more. But after we get our e-learning plan off and running, we'll learn more about what they're doing with construction there. Any other questions?
Well, personally, I've asked most of the questions that I thought were pretty important. What we can do is we can open up, and if other people have questions, we can ask them. I did have one last thing that I was just thinking about as you're talking about construction. Again, I know this isn't top priority for you right now, but has there been any issues with budget allocations during this time, or is there a surplus of money? Because I just know a lot of things are changing with the district, and I don't know if that's affecting costs.
Okay. No, it shouldn't affect costs. We are paying all of our staff. Obviously, our certified staff. We're all paying our classified staff as well for the remainder of the year. Staff that are coming in, for example, our child nutrition staff and some of our facilities staff are being paid time and a half this week, and so we just have to these 2 weeks just make sure we are obviously monitoring that, but we still should be okay and from a budgetary standpoint.
How will students who are doing online courses already be affected by this?
Virtual school. Are you talking about the virtual school?
Yes, the LVS.
Okay. Yeah, they are continuing business as usual as early as Monday. So they will. I mean, obviously, because they're already virtual and completing their assignments at home. So this will not impact them at all.
I wonder, I know most of the guidance on, going forward with continuous learning is going to be coming from the state level, but Has the district looked towards Lawrence Virtual School and what they've been doing there to kind of get an idea of how to run things?
I will say with the platforms that Lawrence Virtual School uses, one is Florida Virtual School platform or curriculum, and the other one is slipping me. But there again, those teachers are teaching. If you're high school, you're teaching 6 or 7 classes, and so there again, we want to be sensitive and mindful to not give our teachers that are in our brick and mortar buildings a new tool to learn to push out. Just don't want to put that stress on our teachers. So like I said, their platform they've been using for a number of years, but their Lawrence Virtual School students use Dell computers. From what I was told, the platform or software that they use is not compatible to MacBooks. It may be able to work on MacBooks, but it will cause for students to download Flash or some other program to make sure it works. But there again, that would, and then again, we're paying a licensing fee for a certain number of license for that. And so now that would be an additional cost for us to purchase additional license. But we don't want to have our teachers learning a new platform.
We currently have international students at both Free State and LHS. How have they been affected by this?
That's a great question, and so I'm not sure how they are affected in terms of their families back home, or yeah, that's a great question. We haven't. I haven't. I will tell you, I haven't heard anything in terms of them being negatively impacted. But I would say if they're there to host home here, they're quarantine as well.
Yeah, what I've actually heard, I've been talking to a lot from Lawrence High School, and I know we have 2 Italian students at Lawrence High School, and they were asked by Green Heart International to return home immediately. German student, the same situation, having to return home. They're not sure if it's within days or weeks or whatever, but they are being asked to go back home.
And where are the 2 from Free State from? I mean, Lawrence High from?
There's 2 Italian ones and one that's from Germany, and we also have one. Is it Josie's from Denmark?
Yes.
But I don't.
Josie hasn't been. Josie has not been asked to return home.
Okay, but the 3 other have.
Okay, so the 2 Italian students and the 1 students from Germany, those 3 have been asked to return home?
Immediately.
Okay.
We have a student staying at Free State for the entire year, and she's from Germany, and she's living with a host family, but she was not asked to return home.
Okay. So yeah, like I said, those students will complete their time here in our country virtually as well.
I have a teacher question for you. This comes up because some of the students had asked me the last couple of days, one had like some medical conditions right before break and had missed a lot of time. And so, kids who are kind of in a hole with their grades right now who would have used 4th quarter to bring them up. Right. What sort of guidance, would you give to teachers who are going to have kids like all over the board in terms of grades, especially kids who are going to be panicked about what that might do to their GPA. I mean, I've had kids email me specifically, oh my gosh, this is what my GPA would look like if this happened. What do you want us to be considering as, we're helping kids through the rest of the semester?
Yeah, I would say just grace, just giving our students a high level of grace. This is new, uncharted courses. We've never been through this. I know my education didn't prepare me for anything like this. And so what I would say to that, and so we can only control what we control. And so those students that, like I say, have, partially completed the 3rd quarter and say their grade may be D, what are some things that or ways or activities or ways that students can really demonstrate that they've mastered that standard, that competency, where it's not negatively impacting their grade. Did that help?
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's what I had told the kids is I thought, we were all going to have to, some of the hard and fast rules that people have, we might have to relax, that sort of thing.
Oh, yes. And I will encourage, and I'm going to put a message out once we get our plan together, and just still strongly encouraging that we relax some of our stiff guidelines, because there again, this is an emotional time, and what we don't want to do is compact some of the strong feelings that our students are, and stress that our students are under right now. We don't want to do that. There again, like I said, this is a time for us to really just come together and understand what our students are going through. Understanding that every single student's home environment from an academic standpoint is going to be different, and so we don't want to add to that stress from our students and our families.
With every student having different needs, how will special education students be helped? And how will their needs be met with all that's going on?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Of course, even just with students with special needs, there's a vast diverse group of students with special needs, from our students that were normally self-contained into one classroom to our students that were receiving resource services. And so in talking with our director of special education, the federal government has provided some guidelines with that. We've been talking about if we can have 10 or less students, well, 9 or less, if you include the teacher, 9 or less students in an area in one classroom. Could this be an opportunity for some of our students with special needs that may need that contact time? But I would caution that again, with students going home and coming back, it's still putting our staff and other students and themselves in a difficult situation. And so we've been talking about home visits. If some of our staff or special education facilitators could do home visits, but our first line will be what can we do virtually? Looking at what we have in our current reality, how can we meet the needs of our students virtually? Because there again, some of our students with special needs, some of them are medically fragile, and we dare not ask them to come to a building. But there again, what are some ways? And we don't want staff going there, exposing them to other viruses. And so there again, this is something that a lot of stuff we don't have answers to, but we're going to have to put our heads together to make sure that we are meeting all of our students' needs. And but to answer to elaborate on that, we still have to follow the students' IEPs as much as possible. And when I say as much as possible, if a student's IEP causes for him to go to the resource room 2 or 3 times a week, well, there's no physical resource room. Could there be a virtual resource room where the teacher is available 2 to 3 times a week? But there again, some of that may be relaxed as well.
I have a question. So I was wondering, you mentioned how seniors who have like credits that are 21, or if they have like 23 credits and are able to graduate, would those students be notified of that before classes resume, and if they can graduate early now?
Yep. So we're going to look at that next week. Right now, the way Power School is set up based on the 24 credits, and so we could run a report if the board approves that we can relax that down to 21 credits. We can run because right now we can look in there and see where every student is as it relates to them completing the required number of credits in power school. And so if we shifted that to 21, we would, and I'm picturing this in my mind because I see green, those little green bars going over. If you shift that to 21, we will be able to run that list and see which of our students have already met that. And most definitely we will notify those students. And some of the students may already know that they've met those requirements. But yeah, most definitely we will notify our students and families.
For those who were relying on this quarter or third quarter to help with their grades, would there be any opportunity for extra credit?
I would say yes, but I would say that at the same time of not stressing students out. And so, for example, an example I used earlier, if there's a student that currently has a D in third quarter, and knowing that this e-learning is going to look different. And so, for example, in the past, in order for me to demonstrate that, I had to complete this task, this assignment, this research paper, whatever, to get this grade. I now may be able to demonstrate that in a totally different way. And so looking back at that third quarter, how can students demonstrate that they mastered that standard or that particular competency in our new e-learning way, if that makes sense. And so when I mentioned grace and having our teachers give our students a tremendous amount of grace, we definitely want them to do that. Now, I'm not saying I want teachers to go back and change grades. I'm not saying that. But what I do want them to do is kind of just look at and see what are some ways that my students can now, given our current circumstance and how we're delivering instruction now, what are some ways our students could really demonstrate that they've mastered this task? Or it may be an assignment to pull that student's grade up. That may be more project-based or in another e-learning format.
And if I have strong feelings about how those types of things are handled or how continuous learning will shape up in this school district, how can I make sure that my voice is heard?
Okay, yeah, I would say immediately have a conversation with your teacher. Your principal is still just will be an email or phone call away. The counselor will still be an email or phone call away. Follow those routes, and just, I mean, if you feel like your voices are not heard, there's other people that you can reach out to. I'm always a snap away, but I want to make sure that we give our teachers an opportunity to address, and our principals an opportunity to address the situation. And I would encourage you, if like I said, we don't know what the plan will look like. We don't have the recommendations for the from the state. But as we roll it out, or if we get off this call now, and you think of some things, or you have some ideas of some things that will be beneficial, shoot them, email me, let me know.
Can I ask one more question? I happened to be out on a walk today with my kids, and I ran into 2 kindergarten teachers, both of who were saying, we have no idea how we're going to do what we do virtually. Are there certain areas that you think, and I wonder if those elementary areas provide like a really unique challenge in terms of reading those kids' needs?
Mm-hmm.
And also, what is the long-term impact for like kids who are just learning how to read and losing this really critical time in school? And are we going to be seeing the impacts of this for years to come?
Bob, we just had this conversation today. You know, you're familiar with the summer slide, right? And so we're calling this the COVID slide, potentially, in terms of, there again, I'm able to go home and I will be able to go home and make sure that my students, my kids, completed their tasks, sit down with them. We have some families that, and staff members too, that have maybe some spouses or significant others that that may be out of work. And so from an economic standpoint, this is going to present some challenges for our families. And so or I may be able to do that. Some families may not be able to go home and assist with their students. And so that will contribute to our students falling far behind. We were talking about our current gap. Is this just going to widen our current gap? And so we were having conversations. Now I mentioned earlier, our elementary school students, really, we have enough iPads for them to have one-to-one. We were having conversations about, do we send them home grades 3 through 5, grades 2 through 5? What do we do for kindergartners? Because the kindergarten teachers are absolutely right. How are they going to sit down when they would used to do what they do in small group and teach students the buh sound or the FL blend, and them pointing to the words and tell them to shrink the word or stretch the word. So that's going to present a challenge. Do we use what we're using now with if I'm a kindergarten teacher or first grade teacher with my small group of students, they would have to have their devices, to do that. I will tell you, Miss, my son's first grade teacher, probably the day after we announced we would be out for 2 weeks, sent us home, as many other teachers did, sent us home packets of what he should be doing. And so, but there again, I have access to a printer home. I can print those things out, but we've been having conversations with our printing services. They'll be ready to print those things. There again, if we have to go deliver the packets. And so for some students and families, it may have to be a packet with check-in from teacher. We had conversations about how this is really shifting the parents' role in their child's education. And so if we're approaching it from a standpoint of our teachers and we're using what we have and what we're comfortable with in terms of platforms, making sure that our families are given some strategies or suggestions that they can still go about their daily life, but still meeting some of the educational needs of our students. I use the example of, because keep in mind, some of our students now are going to be with grandma, right? And so if grandma watches Wheel of Fortune every single day, as those letters coming up, what sound does E make? What sound does this L make? Once they solve the puzzle, you can pause TV now. Go up there and point to all the vowels. It seems crazy, but that's, reminding them, when you go to the grocery store with your family, where are, if it's kindergarten, we're learning our colors, or what are all the fruits that have the ass sound? Go find them. So there again, we're going to have to get really, really creative. But I would say a positive from this is that when we're back to our, I guess, what you say, our regular normal, when we're back to the way things used to be, I think this is where our parents would have more of a true and thorough understanding of how they can help their students at home. I'm sorry for the long-winded answers.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. Lawrence High students, do you have any more questions for the superintendent?
I have one that's kind of like oddly specific, so I apologize for asking it, but it was about like students who do like internships. Like I know like the whole like the teaching internship is like a really big thing, and they're obviously not able to, but I also personally have an internship that I'm supposed to be doing with my law class. How do you advise that to go? Like, I don't know.
So you were doing an internship with a law firm here?
With a officer here in Lawrence, but it was through my class at the College and Career Center.
Okay, so you're doing an intern with a police officer here in Lawrence?
Yeah.
Okay. One, I would tell you to definitely reach out to your instructor.
Okay.
So as of right now, businesses are still operating with the governor's recommendation of 10 or less in a space. so if you are, to say you're shadowing an officer in their office or something like that, and it's just you, the officer, maybe someone else, that's obviously less than 10. But I would definitely want you to chat with your instructor on that. And then, of course, the police department would have to agree to allow that to continue.
Okay.
But there again, your instructor may be able to work with the police officer to see how maybe that could be met virtually as well. But there again, if you're shadowing, and I don't know if that's what you're doing, but if you're shadowing an officer or just you know, having a conversation with them about, you know, what they do or completing some task, that still potentially can go on.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Would you, Dr. Lewis, be willing to do a follow-up interview with us when more information is released?
Yeah, most definitely. Most definitely. I'm going to take to Snapchat tonight. I just need to interact with the students to kind of keep them informed. So absolutely. As soon as we learn more, I will be more than happy to come back on and update you on what we learn.
You may call your answers long-winded. I like to think of them as thorough.
Okay, I like that. I'll start using that then. So forgive me for my thorough answers.
And I know I asked if any Lawrence High students had any questions. Any Free State students have any questions they haven't asked they want to make sure they ask?
If we don't have questions, I definitely would like to thank you for making time for us this evening. This has been an hour and a half that I think has answered a lot of questions for me even, and I feel like you and I have actually talked a lot in the last week.
Yeah. So it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Anytime I can jump on here, I'll be happy to. And plus, it just prolongs me from going home to my kids too.
I deeply appreciate this too, and I wonder. I know there's been a lot of upset students as they figured out how to deal with this throughout the school district. In my own home, do you have a pep talk or some other message you'd like to give them just to encourage them that we're going to get through this?
Yeah. First, I guess I would start with the 3 words that Lucinda Crenshaw ended her most previous emails that she sent to me, and then she just exuded this today in our meeting. And those 3 words are "we got this." And so when I say we got this, it doesn't take away the fact that a lot of the activities, experiences that we're used to having this time of year, spring sports. I have a baseball player in my house, and he's obviously upset as well. And so when you think about the plays, the performances, while all those are canceled, and we may not be able to understand it right now, I will say, and you may not be able to understand what I'm about to say right now, or probably don't want to hear what I'm about to say right now, is that, and I read somewhere on social media, I have to do the math, but it's saying that our seniors now were born around 9/11. Does that math sound about right? Mm-hmm. And now they're graduating during COVID-19. You know, you will be in a much better position as an adult due to your perseverance through this. And what I will also say is, even though we don't understand it now, there's a reason that we're all experiencing this and we're going through this. And it's only preparing you for the many other challenges that you will face as a college student. Those of you that are still in high school that you will face next year as a high school student, but most definitely as you will face as an adult. While this is not the way that we had envisioned this year to end, I will still commit to whenever we are cleared, we're going to have the biggest party prom that you've ever seen. I may go out and get me a tux as well. Graduation is going to be so emotional and so amazing. So I would say just hang in there. I think as our educators, the pep talk I would give to our educators is that this is an opportunity for us to really do what I've been, saying, do something different in terms of what education should look like. This is an opportunity for us to really, truly meet the individual needs of our students. And for our students, again, many of you spend a large percent of your day on technology, whether it's your cell phone or it's your device, and you learn that way. And so embrace that, because I will tell you, you'll be faced with this again in college in terms of e-learning and learning online. But this is the way you learn. Leverage that. You're going to be rock stars at it. I had I think a middle school or maybe an elementary student, I don't know who it was, just sent me an email just a moment ago. Dr. Lewis, can you enable FaceTime on our iPads? If I legally can, and it's okay with parents and board policy or anything like that, I want to do that because you need that social interaction. So I'm willing to do any and everything that we can to make sure that you, and I share this today too, students depend on schools for more than just the academics. They depend on schools for that social aspect. As a matter of fact, some of our kids probably wouldn't come to school if they know they can socialize. So I want to make sure that you still have some opportunity to still socialize. I know high school students, you have your cell phones and you can FaceTime. And my son last night was on FaceTime with his light off, talking to his girlfriend. So he couldn't see her. I said, "Why are you on FaceTime?" But anyway, but just know, just pick up on a call. But just know that I am committed to doing whatever it takes to make sure that 10 years down the road, when we all look back at this, we're gonna laugh. We're gonna say it was well worth it. So I would say just hang in there. And as Lucinda Crenshaw says, we got this.
One last thing, both Mrs. Tholen and I have had teachers reach out to us and ask why we have this going on, why we're not protecting our journalism students and just letting them process. I wanted to share with you, and I've talked to my editors today about this. The way I'm looking at this, and I think this is true for Barb too, and she'll correct me if I'm wrong, but this is our way of helping students process, to give them some normal in their lives. And so we've been having discussions today about, do we do a print newspaper? Originally, when we were just going to be out for 2 weeks, we were thinking, well, maybe we'll just do like an email blast and send it out to all the families and everything. But then in thinking about it, would it help make the situation more normal for students if they were to receive in the mail a paper newspaper, something that brings a little bit of school to their home?
I think that would be phenomenal for students to go to the mailbox and see what they normally would see in the hallway in their mailbox. Mm-hmm. I think that would be amazing.
Again, thank you for the time you've spent with us this evening. We so appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. To our students, hang in there. I know this is difficult, but I do appreciate you all getting on these Zooms. I know this is not the first time you've been on it. You've been on it the past couple of days or several days. So I appreciate you really jumping in there. And so, yeah, thank you. And if I have other updates, or when I have other updates, I will reach out to you, Barb, or Lori, and we can set up a Zoom.
Great. Thank you.
Dr. Lewis.
All right.
Much.
Have a good night.
Thanks, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.